My little pony, fatherless pony, punishment can hold their sins.
I'm Pestilence Pony!
I'm War Pony.
I'm Famine Pony.
I am
And we are Evermeadow's Downfall.
The horsemen are taking to divinity well. Our ethereal tether to the material plane from our ever-expanding Avalon is quite unnecessary nowadays. After all, we want to reduce our visibility to holy and elemental forces. King Leonari may have his lands back for now. Why deprive him of the delusion that his little world is safe? Though, despite us pulling the divine veil away from the fields and meadows without a great amount of deception or manipulation, there is no denying that the god of pestilence ravaged planet Alima in his cataclysmic explosion. We will have work to do when we return. To further increase our faith, the former town of Avalon has been given back to the world as a holy land to us horsemen, with our living devotees congregating there to follow the wishes of their merciful yet powerful gods. In our realm of Avalon, however, my fiancée V has encouraged her student Takala to continuously mate with the succubi under our rule, whose offspring shall pull souls from the great creator himself in excess. But procreation is not the only task we assign the Grim Goblin with. His expertise in handling souls will be put to the test as we implant plenty of our souls from our realm into dead bodies, restoring them, anima flowing through their veins, but just enough to perform sacred rituals in our honor. We will need plenty of faith to consume the remaining gods, and then even greater conquest. And wouldn't you know it, our faithful are so kind to take a tip from Asmodeus and possess mortals, embedding themselves into the minds and consciousnesses. They will be taught of our glory and sovereignty, deep within their subdued spirits, as though we were the only gods they've ever known. It is no secret that the Hanging Noose Camp inserted themselves into the royal guard of the king to heavily censor the information he receives, so I think it's only fitting that our servant shall improve upon this, taking hold of ordinary citizens and knights one by one, to the point where Leonari will be surrounded on all sides, blissfully unaware of how outnumbered he is. In further developments, Gorbesh, the god of war, has manifested from the pool of faith the horsemen have collected to allow the paladins in our realm to battle and fight eternally, taking a page out of Thor's divine realm so that he can enlist a fourth general whose position will only be granted as long as they can't be bested, else the title shall be passed down to the victor. Who knows? Maybe the depleted former war god Grumsh can earn some relevance again. And the Domain of Death, hosted by Captain V, Horseman of Death, has gained tiered destinations for those who would arrive there. Those nearly sinless shall find pleasure, comfort, and loving hospitality in Euphoria, living the good afterlife with Glenda, V's adoptive mother. Those who lived a more average life, not too pious, not too evil, shall wander Asphodel, trying to redeem themselves with their deeds there, which may grant them enough good karma to thrive, or suffer for their lethargy. And finally, ye wicked sinners shall burn eternally in the azure flames of Tefet, where no one will miss you as you toil and receive punishment based on your sins. The building blocks for our future are soundly laid, so off to a new land we go to claim for ourselves. Welcome, my comrades, to Tabuga, a massive continent that is rich in Alima's natural influence, with thick jungles as far as the eye can see, bizarre breeds of animals who protect the land by harnessing elemental force, and a social culture of orators and shamans who provide stories, wisdom, healing, and living off the land, attempting to not take too greedily. While gods do not natively watch over Tabuga, as many have taken to praising mighty animals who watch over the land, these people do not have any disdain for gods either. Their primary figure of reverence is the Great Ape, who nearly 30 years ago was slain by a covetous warlord known as Quick Draw Jack, whose organization of the Bushwhackers have loyally followed his demands. Jack was appointed the position of warden of the Deep's jail, a place for the unruly and dastardly, who did not belong in civilized society, whose crimes sent them over a mile below the earth, slaving away at the taskmaster's demand. Though when appointed, it didn't take long for Quick Draw Jack to take advantage of having a workforce and strong captors under his control. With sentences always demanding years of work in the jail, Jack turned prisoners into slaves, mining the vast riches from underneath the surface to increase his wealth, and having the Bushwhackers capture citizens for very meager or made-up crimes, including family of those who were destined to leave employment soon, so no one would notice them missing. With a population as high as Tabuka's, along with how dangerous the jungles and animals can be, who's to notice or worry if someone disappeared? The most renowned shaman of the lands and people, with absolute certainty, is Ubuntu, who was once saved in his youth by the Great Ape, and spent his life performing his works on his behalf, sharing a bond that radiates down to their very soul. They were both cherished by the populace, so when Jack found the Great Ape troubling to his operations, he had his Bushwhackers assassinate the primal beast in the night, leaving the Great Ape unaware of what destroyed his material bindings, and Ubuntu appearing guilty of the crime, despite pleading his sorrow and innocence before the populace. But what Jack wants, Jack gets, and he got to imprison Ubuntu. Though with the severity of the crime, Jack had no choice but to have Ubuntu on the surface level, visible for all to see and exclaim their disdain for him. He spent 25 years meditating despite the cruel words of the people accusing him of killing his best friend, a crime he did not commit, with the only comfort coming from the Great Ape spirit, who stayed behind to take care of his sad little buddy. Nearing the end of his time there, the evidence was found that completely vindicated Ubuntu, yet not being tied to the Bushwhackers. Both were free of the murder of one of Alima's precious children. Reintegrated into society, Ubuntu was honored among the people as a man of his principles, his dignity, grace, and wisdom, and fit to hold a higher station over others. While not a high king, his words matter, and his healing of his people kept him beloved. That is, until the horsemen arrived. The following events occurred during a 3-week period. V approached a man on his deathbed, making herself visible to only him while he was surrounded by his loved ones, and judged the sins of his life through her spectral eye. And finding him worthy of euphoria, she showed him what his afterlife would be, teaching him that death is nothing to fear, and to inform his family of the splendor of the god of death. Meanwhile, the god of war used the mortal's death as an opportunity to spread discourse through the people of Juji-Iko, that if Ubuntu would have cared more, he could have saved the lad. The shaman, when he arrived, was unwelcomed by the people who once cared highly for him. Word spread of death and war's influence and distrust in Ubuntu to Doli village and Ungawa. Gorbesh spoke to Venataba, a charismatic slave to the Deep's jail, and inspired him and the miners to become paladins of the horsemen, where they will have the strength to overtake the taskmasters and crawl out of the cursed pit, where they captured, stripped, and executed the horrible warden, reclaiming their dignity and futures with their calloused hand. Since this almost uncountable populace lived in horrible conditions, they needed a new home to make their own, and we were happy to lead them to the Ordu ruins, where a smaller Holy Land was built upon the wreckage. And then, the next part of our plans went into motion, where Ubuntu was called to help a seemingly helpless woman in Ordu, who was in truth an incredibly capable paladin of our order, who put him in a situation too sinister for words. But rest assured, the populace of Ordu, Doli, Juji-Iko, Ungawa, and the Jewel of the Jungle called for justice, bringing him before all to publicly execute him. Our dear Venataba was the one to carry out the sentence, and Tabuga couldn't be happier. Now we only have the defensive animals, the remaining Bushwhackers, and the Great Ape Spirit to deal with. One can only hope Ruin doesn't swing this way.